live on YouTube. Okay, Mataji. 7:30. Let's get started.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Nice to be back here with all of you today. Today we will be covering the seventh chapter of Canto 1, The Son of Drona Punished. A very, very exciting chapter. Actually, it's just very good for the children because it's full of action here. So just to give a little summary of what we have done in the last chapter, in chapter 6 of Canto 1. So, well, in the last few chapters, Vyasadeva has been feeling very dissatisfied. He's feeling a lack of accomplishment. And Narad Muni hinted that he had not glorified Krishna directly and substantially, repeatedly, and that is why he's not feeling happy. And Narad Muni told him that you have described everything as being separate from Krishna, which causes suffering and deeper entanglement in the material world. And Narad Muni even said in some very key verses in the last chapter that even if a literature is full of literary embellishments, but if it does not glorify Krishna then directly, then it is useless. However, if a literature is, even though it's imperfectly composed, but which describes Krishna, it will be coveted by the transcendentalists. Then in the text 13 of the last chapter, Narad Muni told Vyasadeva that he glorifies him actually, and he says that your good fame is spotless, you're firmly situated in truthfulness, and therefore you can think of the pastimes of the Lord in trance. So he tells his disciple that he should meditate and fully realize what I've spoken to you, the kind of advice I've given you, and that will be of benefit to the people because it will free them from material bondage. After this, Narad Muni gives his whole life story of how he became a devotee, how he was always engaged in chanting, and how he wandered alone fearlessly. And the reason why he was so fearless is because he was deeply realized. He was not afraid of losing everything. Only when a person is self-realized is fearless. And Narad Muni was totally self-realized. So then Vyasadeva, he sat and meditated, and the Lord appeared within the lotus of his heart and told him that he told Narad Muni that unfortunately you're not pure enough and your serving mood is not yet mature. So you have to remain here for some time without seeing me. And then the Lord disappears. Narad Muni actually finds himself very fortunate to be able to hear him and see him once at least. And now he was in deep separation from him. So he spends the rest of his life chanting his holy name. Narad Muni eventually dies and gains a spiritual body and receives the potency to wander everywhere. So after explaining the story of his few lives, Narad Muni left, and then the sages who were questioning Sutta Goswami asked in this chapter, chapter 7, what did Vyasadeva do after Narad Muni left? And I will read the first Sanskrit of the first verse and the first and second verse and the translation. Shaunaka vacha nirgate narada suta bhagavan badarayana shrutavams tad abhipretam tata kim akarod vibhu. Rishi Shaunaka said, O Suta, the great and transcendently powerful Vyasadeva, heard everything from Narad Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? Suta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there's a cottage for meditation at Samya Prasha, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages. In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Now, the one word to note is ashram, and I thought it would be a nice point to elaborate for our children to explain them what exactly an ashram means. So, Vyasadeva was sitting. It said he was sitting in his ashram. And what is an ashram? An ashram is a place where spiritual life is cultivated. It's not like it's a place where it can be only an ashram where brahmacharis or vanaprasthas live or sannyasis. It's a place where grihasthas also live, is called ashram, provided they are practicing Krishna consciousness. So otherwise, the Shastra says it's a place for grihamedis. So, so it doesn't matter. The point is that it doesn't matter which ashram we belong to, but the purpose is to serve Krishna, to worship Krishna. And even Prabhupada explains that how the householders, they are externally, they are not renunciates, but internally they should be. In other words, they should understand the purpose of life. But externally they have to live with their family, their children, do their duties towards the family as well as, but the greater duty of Krishna consciousness must be also performed. So now in the next slide, we're going to talk about what did Vyasadeva see. As we know, Narad Muni asks Vyasadeva to meditate and to ponder what he has told him. So Vyasadeva, being the literary incarnation of the Lord himself, he's situated in this ashram, and he fixes his mind in bhakti yoga, and he engages it one-pointedly towards devotional service. And Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, he says that Prema Bhakti, which is what the platform where Vyasadeva was, being the empowered personality of Godhead, one cannot, unless one is in Prema Bhakti, one cannot have a revelation. And there are three types of Prema Bhakti, pure devotional service. One can be on the sadhana stage, the practice stage. Second one in the pure devotional service on the bhava stage, and pure devotional service on the prema stage. And what is this pure devotional service on the prema platform? On this platform, one's connection is fully mature. And this is the platform that Krishna wanted Narad Muni to come to, where he's always connected with the Lord, and that is prema bhakti of the highest kind. And he sees Krishna every moment. And Vyasadeva was on this platform, and so therefore he had a full revelation. And what did he see? He saw the complete absolute truth, who's Krishna himself. He saw the Lord, Krishna, and his internal energy. And Prabhupada gives example how just when one sees the moon, one also sees the moon shine. In other words, when we see the Lord, we also see his energies, because that's part of him that comes with him. So when he saw Krishna, he actually saw Krishna in Vrindavan. He saw Radharani, he saw the Lord and his internal energy and his dealings with the internal energy. In other words, with the residents of Vrindavan. He saw Paramatma feature of the Lord, he saw Brahman feature. He also saw the Lord's Maya, and this Maya was fully under the control of Krishna. This point is very important. Prabhupada explains how Mayavadis, they think that absolute truth becomes affected by the external energy, and they become two things. When the absolute truth is affected by the external energy, it becomes two things, the Jiva and the Lord. In other words, the Lord comes under the influence of Maya. And they say that his Maya Shakti, his own Maya Shakti and Jiva is nothing but the Lord under the influence of Maya. In other words, when the Jiva is out of Maya, he becomes the Lord. So, but this is not Vyasadeva is seeing here or saying. He's saying that this Maya Shakti is under the control of Krishna. Maya has a particular relationship with the Lord, which will be actually described in the third canto. Maya is very ashamed of her task of putting the Jiva under the control of mature energy. She does not even face the Lord out of shame. Thus, Vyasadeva saw everything, and he saw the external energy which was fully under his control. Then he saw the jivas, who were illusioned by this external energy, Maya Devi. So the Lord has the external energy under control, but the jiva is illusion or is under the control of Maya. And what is this illusion? They're made to think that they are they have different identities, and therefore they identify with all the desires in the heart and get entangled. And in this way, the jiva undergoes the laws of karma. And although he has nothing to do with it, he's spiritual, he's totally spiritual. So this is what Vyasadeva saw. He saw the poor jivas who are trapped within this body, but are only suffering. So the question remains, how are the living entity going to get free from the tight grip of Maya? So this we will see in our next slide, the remedy for this from this entanglement of material nature. Now this identity with matter, Vyasadeva, Sutta Goswami explains, can be directly removed from the heart, from the body and mind by performing sadhana bhakti to Krishna, who is beyond material senses. Because people do not know that this fact, that actually this matter, this identity with matter can be removed by performing bhakti, they're using other means to remove their miseries. So Vyasadeva composed Srimad Bhagavatam to remove their miseries by understanding that they are Krishna's servant who is unlimited. Every living being is a servant of Krishna. This is our nature. This is our Sarupa, which cannot be separated from us. Now, Vyasadeva points out that how the Vedic literature should be heard not mechanically, but submissively in a proper mode. By hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one's relationship is cut off from his body and relationship with the Lord begins. And all misery, lamentation, and fear is completely eradicated, and one develops a spiritual identity or Sarupa. And what is the spiritual identity? Is when the soul understands that Krishna is mine, or I belong to Krishna. And this amazingly high stage happens just by giving oral reception to Srimad Bhagavatam. So in our next slide, which is a very important one, is we're going to talk about why did Shukadeva Goswami undergo the study of Srimad Bhagavatam if he was already self-realized? Just like we were discussing in the last chapter, why did Vyasadeva, have to write Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses, even though he had written so many literatures? Why did he have to? So this question is being raised for Shukadeva Goswami, because Shukadeva Goswami was a fully realized soul, and he was on the Brahman platform. In other words, he was a sage, he was a renunciate, he was fully realized, and he saw everything as the energy of Krishna. In other words, he had no material desires. He did not connect anything with matter. You may remember that story of how when he was walking past the place where the women were bathing, how the women did not even cover themselves because they could see that he was completely beyond matter. He did not want to get entangled in material world. So when he was in the womb of his mother, he refused to come out. And Krishna actually had to come all the way from Dwarka to assure him that he will not be in Maya. Then when he finally came out of the womb, I think after 16 years, then he left home. And when he was walking away from his home, his father was calling and saying, oh my son, oh my son. You may recall, we were reading that in the earlier chapters. And the disciples of Vyasadeva at that point, Vyasadeva sent some of his disciples actually behind Shukadeva Goswami, and they started singing some verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And and these verses were about the incredible ways Krishna deals with his devotees. They were also about describing his beautiful form. So Shukadeva Goswami, after hearing these verses, he returned immediately to hear about Krishna from his great father. Now, Prabhupada makes the point how the Mayavadis say that the Lord's pastimes are composed of Maya because they are this material world. But the question is, why would if his pastimes of this material world are composed of Maya, then why would Shukadev Goswami spend so much time studying Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing about Krishna? And he was renounced anyway, so why would he take that trouble? He had nothing to do with matter. He was completely transcendental. It means that hearing Srimad Bhagavatam elevated him higher to the platform of Bhagavan realization. He was already fully realized. So Shukadev Goswami was known as Atmaram, and that takes us to actually text 10, which talks about, detail about Atmarama, and this is elaborately explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya describes this verse in 61 different ways. So, but just in a nutshell, to explain to our children what an Atmaram means, there's many varieties of them, but the one common fact of Atmarama means that they like to hear the pastimes of Krishna. And their hearing is quite different, and their realization is quite different from a jiva, a jiva who's advancing in this path of Krishna consciousness. Is because they're already liberated and they're not trying to get pleasure from matter. Because they are free from all these material things, they are doing devotional service which is pure, which is causeless. And for example, karmavadis, people who perform karma yoga, they have some motive, right? Brahmavadis also have some motive where they are trying to meditate on the Brahman platform, but these Atmaramas, they have no motive, and that is bhakti. So when the jiva serves the Lord, they have no motive. When the jiva serves the Lord, the material illusion is removed, and that brings mercy from the Lord. Right? When the Atmaramas worship the Lord, who are already satisfied, it brings the greatest pleasure, because their service and bhakti is without any motive. So this is what Shukadev Goswami was, why he became so self-realized, where we were hearing how he was like the parrot. When he spoke the Bhagavatam, everything became sweeter. And even though in his audience there was Narad Muni sitting there, and his own father Vyasadeva, when they listened to Shukadev Goswami, it was like they were hearing it for the first time. And they were self-realized, and Vyasadeva himself had written the Bhagavatam. But how is it that possible? It's because he was an Atmarama who had heard, who had no material desires. So when he relished the Bhagavatam, what came out from his mouth was very, very potent. So in this way, Shukadev Goswami, it's also explained regarding his characteristics, that how he was very dear to the Supreme Lord and to the devotees. He gave up the Brahman platform to become a devotee, and this shows that the point really shows very strongly is that Bhagwan is superior to Brahman platform. And this story becomes such a wonderful example to prove that point, to explain to our children why, when we explain the three, we've done this earlier in one of the chapters, the three aspects of Godhead, the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. So this story becomes a very case study of why Bhagwan feature is higher, in the case of Shukadev Goswami. So it becomes easier for children to understand this point. Now, in the next slide, the action begins. This is the aftermath of the war. And this is starting text 13. We hear about after the war has ended. As we know, the war came about because the Kauravas had taken wrongfully the kingdom from the Pandavas, and they had refused to give them any of their share. And not only that, they had tried different ways where they could kill actually the Pandavas. But and so war was inevitable. But Arjuna was hesitating to fight. He did not want to see so many people die. He wanted to withdraw from the battle. And at that point, Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita right in the middle of the battlefield. And he removed his illusion. And Arjuna understood that his prime duty was to surrender and serve the will of Krishna. So Arjuna surrendered. And he fought. And millions were killed. And practically only the Pandavas remained. How How many people were killed? 640 million people were killed. And actually, the Shastras say that in order to remove the burden of the earth, Krishna brought everybody together and had them killed. And this is such a, just the other day I was reading one section of the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada was describing how all these wars and all these epidemics and these things are, Krishna brings things together to, as a reaction, and it's all a result of cow killing, how is such a heavy karma that we incur through meat eating. So Duryodhan, towards the end of the battle, he's hiding under the water, and then of course Bhima challenges him, and he comes out and he fights with Bhima, and as we know the story, Bhima hits him below the belt and he breaks his thigh that he had promised. To break, as you remember Draupadi's Chirharan story, where Duryodhan had invited Draupadi to sit on his thigh, and that inflamed Bhima, and he had vowed to smash him, in this way. So now after this happens, and Duryodhan is lying there in really a painful condition to the verge of death, then Ashwathama, who's very loyal to Duryodhan, he goes and out of loyalty, misplaced loyalty, he goes and he kills the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi. Of course, Duryodhan, surprisingly, is very displeased with his heinous act. And because he's not killed the Pandavas, but he's killed the sons of the Pandavas. And he tells them, Ashwatthama, that what was the point? What is the benefit in destroying all the remaining heirs to the Kuru dynasty? And plus, the way he acted was against Kshatriya codes. So in the meantime, Draupadi finds out that, and she's, of course, very, very disturbed. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about how Arjuna chases Ashwatthama, and because he's naturally very angry, and he runs after Ashwatthama. And I'll read a few verses just to give this action of what's going on. Arjuna, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. I forgot to mention how he satisfied Draupadi by telling her that I shall bring the head of that Brahmana, Ashwatthama, and you can then wipe your tears from your eyes, and this will pacify you. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set to follow Ashwatthama, the son of his martial teacher. Ashwatthama, the murderer of the princess, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear from Shiva. When the son of the Brahmana, Ashwatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra, nuclear weapon. Since his life was in danger, he touched water in sanctity and concentrated upon the chanting of the hymns for throwing nuclear weapons, although he did not know how to withdraw such weapons. Thereupon, a glaring light spread in all directions. It was so fierce that Arjuna thought his own life in danger, and so he began to address Lord Krishna. Arjuna said, "O my Lord Shri Krishna, you're the almighty personality of Godhead. There's no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the hearts of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material miseries can find the path of liberation in you only." So a few verses down. Thus, you descend as an incarnation to remove the world and to benefit your voice. I'm constantly wrapped in meditation upon you. O Lord of Lords, how is it that this dangerous effulgence is spreading all around? Where does it come from? I do not understand it. The Supreme Personality of God has said, "Know from me that this is the act of the son of Drona. He has thrown the hymns of nuclear energy, Brahmastra, and he does not know how to retract the glare. He has helplessly done this, being afraid of imminent death. O Arjuna, only another Brahmastra can counter this weapon. Since you are expert in the military science, subdue this weapon's glare with the power of your own weapon." Srila Sutta Goswami said, hearing this from the personality of Godhead, Arjuna touched water for purification. And after circumambulating Lord Shri Krishna, he cast his Brahmastra weapon to counteract the other one. When the rays of the two Brahmastra combined, a great circle of fire, like the disk of the sun, covered all outer space and the whole firmament of planets. All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the Samvartaka, fire, which takes place at the time of annihilation. Thus, seeing the disturbance of the general populace and the imminent destruction of the planets, Arjuna at once retracted both Brahmastra weapons as Lord Krishna desired. And the next two verses are very nice and very key, which will lead into my next slide, where Arjuna, his eyes blazing in anger like two red balls of copper, dexterously arrested the son of Gautami and bound him with ropes like an animal. After binding Ashwatthama, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke to Arjuna in an angry mood. So Krishna is looking with his lotus eye, but he's also angry. So that's a very wonderful contradiction, where even though he's angry, his eyes are like lotus. That leads into our next slide, by the way. Yeah, Krishna's eyes compared to Arjuna's eyes, right? So in other words, Arjuna is looking, his eyes are like red copper balls, but Krishna is also angry, but his eyes are like lotus petals, right? So, so why is Krishna's eyes described as lotus eyes? Because Krishna's is disturbed. He's thinking that because my devotee is angry, therefore I'm angry. In other words, it shows his bent of mind towards Arjuna. That is why he's angry. As we know very well, Krishna's anger and his love is the same, because everybody is benefited, whether he's angry or he's loving. And a nice example would be Krishna in the Damodar Leela, where he's showing anger towards his mother because she's not giving him. She got up to take care of anger, and he's also angry, and he's showing greed for more milk. So like the Bhagavad Gita says that how lust, anger, and greed are gateways to hell. But Krishna, when he shows these qualities, is considered transcendental. It's wonderful, right? So so that's a nice point that we can discuss with our children, and this way we can explain how beautiful Krishna is. How in his anger also he has lotus eyes. So now it's going to be a very interesting turn of this chapter, where we're going to give different reasons in the next slide. And the first one is going to talk about the reasons that Krishna gives why Ashwatthama should be killed. And it's going to lead to a deeper point, though, that actually, even though he's giving the reasons to kill Ashwatthama, he really doesn't want Arjuna to kill Ashwatthama. So that's the contradiction there that we're going to also discuss after we discuss the reasons why what Krishna gives to kill Ashwatthama. Now, the text 35 says, Lord Krishna said, "O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahma Bandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep." So very interestingly, Krishna calls him a Brahma Bandhu. So we can explain to our children what exactly Brahma Bandhu means. It means a relative of a Brahman, but not a Brahmana, because he did not act like a Brahmana. In other words, being a Brahmana, which is being decorated with all godly qualities, means it has to come by qualification and not by birth. And here you can explain that a Vaishnava, because he's decorated with good qualities, godlike qualities, it's automatically a Brahmana, right? But Brahmana is not by birth, but by quality. And Prabhupada gives a wonderful example of how the son of a high court judge is not automatically a high court judge. He has to qualify himself to become one. He may have the better opportunity in his life to become a high court judge, but he cannot be a high court judge unless he's qualified. So that's the first argument Krishna gives. Now, the second argument Krishna says, a person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who's careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot. Nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. So, in other words, he's saying very strongly that Ashwatthama has violated the codes of war. And then he explains what these codes of war are in this text, in this verse, right? So, and all these people are not to be killed. But here, Ashwatthama has broken that code because he's killed children who are sleeping, and so he's violated the codes of justice. So, when to show compassion and when to show justice is actually an art, right? And this also gives a very nice point here is that how formally the battles were fought on moral principles, on principles of religion, not on principles of whim, or hatred. So, so whenever the enemy, they did not resist or gave up, surrendered, there was no killing. Right? Now, a nice example could be this in the story of Varhadev. When there's a fight between Varhadev and Hiranyaksha, and while they were fighting, Varahadev's weapon. That would have been a great moment, right? But rather he waits and for Krishna to pick up his weapon, right? Even though he was such a big demon. So people used to follow certain codes of war. And that was very nice. Now, the third reason he gives is the cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well being. Otherwise, he will go down by his own actions. And Prabhupada calls it life for life. In other words, a murderer who's killed somebody else for his own benefit, he should be killed. He should be killed or hanged because that way he doesn't have to go to this horrible karma of killing, taking a life that we have no right to, right? So it's explains in the purport. Prabhupada explains how it's good for him and it's good for others because then people are not encouraged to do the same thing. And also, he's such a dangerous person that in future he can kill more. Now, of course, we know this is a great point of contention in today's world. Capital punishment, we call it, and a lot of debate on this topic. But according to Vedas, Vedic perspective, such a person should be killed. It's a just punishment, in other words. And of course, Prabhupada in this purport goes on to explain how killing of animals is in the same category and how by killing such a, for example, earlier we talked about the killer of a murderer. By killing him, you prevent him from doing a lot of mischief in the society, gruesome mischief. And then another reason that he gives is that furthermore, I have heard personally from you, promise Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons. Next reason, the last reason. This man is an assassin and murderer of your own family members. Not only that, but he has also dissatisfied his master. He is but the burned remnants of his family. Kill him immediately. So Krishna is very strong. He's saying it's not only that he's done all these mistakes of going against codes and being irresponsible, but he's also he's displeased his own master, Duryodhan, who was very unhappy with him. Right now, in the next slide, like I mentioned earlier, we will go into the deeper aspect. Why actually Krishna did not want Arjuna to kill Ashwatthama. So, in other words, Krishna did not mean that Arjuna should kill Ashwatthama. And so, why did he do it? Prabhupada explains it was simply to test Arjuna. And Arjuna passed the test. He was a great soul. And what is Krishna testing him about? Is to test Arjuna's sense of duty. Now, Krishna already knew that Arjuna has a great sense of duty. He's already seen that in the war. He's already seen how Arjuna did his duty as a Kshatriya, and while he was while performing devotional service of pleasing the Lord, right? So why is he still doing it? Is to make that point for us and also to glorify his devotee Arjuna. So I thought nice examples here to help make this point would be how in the story of seventh canto, in the story of Prahlad, how Nrsimhadev told Prahlad when he was very pleased with him, and Hiranyakashipu had been killed by him, and Prahlad was there standing. Nrsimhadev asked him to ask some benedictions, and Prahlad was actually, he was very upset. He told Krishna that, am I your businessman or something? That I want an exchange for my devotional service. So in order to reveal this wonderful quality of Prahlad, Nrsimhadev tempted Prahlad with these mature benedictions. And then a very nice story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Mahaprakash Leela, where Lord Chaitanya is asking all of his devotees, these great devotees, to ask for benediction. And of course, all of them were on the purest level and they were totally surrendered. But Lord Chaitanya does this to tempt them, or he tempts them with benedictions. But it was really a test for our own benefit, where we understand the surrendered mood of these great devotees. So in the same way, he tested Arjuna for our purpose to glorify his devotees. And there's many other examples where Krishna in the 10th canto, he's testing the gopis, when he asks them to go back after they've, come to see him at night when he, not being able to resist his sound of his flute. Krishna tells them to go back, and he cites many moral reasons that how can you do that? You're coming in the middle of night to meet your boyfriend, and all your children are waiting, your brothers are waiting, your husbands are waiting, and so he tests them. And of course, Krishna doesn't want them to go, and the devotee and the gopis don't go. But why is he doing this? To show us the love and selfless surrender. There's like this. There's many examples where Krishna actually doesn't mean things or doesn't mean things literally, and only a pure devotee can understand the deeper meaning behind it. Right? Like Arjuna understood through this equivocal instructions of Krishna: kill him, but then really I don't want you to kill. Right? Then. So in other words, Shukadev, of course, there's more examples. Another example could be how a devotee tests another devotee. Like Shukadev Goswami, he tests Maharaj Parikshit, at the end of the 5th canto, where, the 5th canto is a lot about hellish planets. And when Parikshit Maharaj hears that, he's completely, amazed, very scared. And he says that, for whom? For the conditioned souls. And he asks Shukadev Goswami, how can we help the conditioned souls not go through these hellish planets? And Shukadev Goswami gives the example of atonement, how they can prevent themselves from going to the hellish planets by the process of atonement. And which is, so many different ways of atonement he mentioned, of doing charity, austerity. In this way, they can free themselves from this, path to hellish life. And Parikshit Maharaj counters this argument, this theory of atonement, by saying that, well, this is like bathing of an elephant. You know how an elephant, he goes into water, cleans himself, and then he comes out and throws mud over him. So this way, sinful activities cannot be counteracted by atonement because the person will commit sinful activities again. So one has, then Shukadev Goswami, knowing that Parikshit Maharaj is not satisfied, then he gives him the ultimate instruction, the ultimate solution for escape, for not going into this hellish world, or even to come back to this mature world again in any form, is to actually do pure devotional service unto the Lord. So in this way, Shukadev Goswami is also testing his devotees. And this is the sweetness of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam is not just like a straight cut stories of great personalities. It just goes very, very deep, where we understand the meaning by implied ways, as well as through abstract ways, as well as through deeper meanings through analogies. So this way it helps the child actually cultivate, sharpen his intelligence and intelligence and critical thinking. And there's a couple more examples of Shukadev Goswami, which when I went through the Bhagavatam, it's very, very interesting how he was, in the end, in the 12th canto, when Parikshit Maharaj was ready to go, back to God. And in other words, he was, the snake bird was just ready to kill him, to come and bite him. Shukadev Goswami, right before that, is giving instructions to Parikshit Maharaj how, mainly Jnana Yoga, how he's not this body and spirit soul, and he should meditate on that. Then Parikshit Maharaj, he doesn't like that, and he says, well, you have given me all this knowledge, culminating in the 10th canto, the Krishna's pastimes, and so I'm going to leave it in that way. I'm going to leave my body in a devotional way. So in other words, Shukadev Goswami tests his disciple. Even in the end, till the very end, he tests him. And Parikshit Maharaj refuses to take this jnana and just surrender to Krishna. So now Arjuna has caught Ashwatthama, he's bound him with ropes, and he brings him in front of Draupadi. And so in our next slide, we're going to hear about wonderful section where we're going to hear about the amazing 6 qualities of Draupadi, which are highlighted in her 6 arguments against killing Ashwatthama. So in other words, she has 6 arguments why Ashwatthama should not be killed. But that's highlighting her 6 wonderful qualities. And that will lead into a deeper point of how everyone can serve Krishna according to their different natures. And here, Draupadi is acting as a great Vaishnavi here. And she could not tolerate Ashwatthama being bound by ropes, even though she's just seen her children die, right, by that same culprit, right? But she's got so much compassion. She has so much compassion. And she shows that by telling him that, no, you should leave him. And then if you contrast it with Gandhari, when in the story of Mahabharata, when all her 100 sons are killed, she's so angry and she curses Krishna and she blasphemes Krishna. So this, in contrast, we can see Draupadi's wonderful character. Right? Even though Ashwatthama was, even though what he did, it doesn't condone that, right? And he's supposed to be, he should be punished. But this quality shows the devotee's forgivable nature. So here Draupadi is not thinking in matters of Shastra, but rather she's thinking as a matter of compassion, right? Matter of dharma and compassion as well. Then, of course, she argues on the point of on the point of mercy, that how Kripi, who's the wife of Ashwatthama, will be suffering the loss of a son. How she did not commit sati because she had a son remaining. And so now she was going to be heartbroken, just like I am heartbroken. So her quality of equity, where she's feeling the same thing for Kripi as she went herself. Again, a great Vaishnava quality. And then she's also, her quality of non-duplicitous is mentioned, where she's saying that, well, how can you, Dronacharya has been your teacher, and now you've taken all the arts from him, martial arts from him, and now you're going to use that art to kill his own son? And she thought that's very duplicitous. So that shows, again, her quality of justice and non-duplicity. So in this way, she has the merciful reason and also her feeling of equal quality with others, feeling the pain of others. So, and then her glorious nature has been shown in her when she talks about that how if Arjuna kills Ashwatthama, since Ashwatthama is a Brahmana, and how killing of a Brahmana will burn up the whole body of the royal family and bring grief upon all. And this shows her glorious nature. So all the 6 qualities are being exemplified here in this section of the Bhagavatam, which goes on till 51, I think, yeah. And now we'll talk about the next slide, where I'm going to discuss about the deeper point, that how devotees really can serve Krishna according to the nature. That's the amazing thing. Because this is a very nice point for our children, because because they understand how every devotee can be of a different nature and quality, and everyone can serve according to who they are. In other words, one doesn't have to be, uh, like Draupadi, or one doesn't have to be in contrast like Bhima, who wanted him to be killed, right? But one can be who they are and still serve Krishna according to one's own nature. And yeah, so everybody has, and here we see a very wonderful scenario where Krishna is allowing everybody to speak, and he's patiently hearing all of these instructions. He heard 6 arguments from Draupadi, and he heard one from Yudhishthira Maharaj and one from Bhima. Yudhishthira Maharaj agreed with Draupadi. He didn't want Ashwatthama to be killed. Bhima was totally against Draupadi's thinking. So how we're going to hear in how Krishna is going to reconcile all of this and give his own instructions. So for our purpose, for this point that I'm raising here, is that we understand how the principle of purpose still remains. We call it Siddhanta, it still remains. In other words, the purpose, the idea behind all of these devotees who have different opinions is that they're trying to please Krishna. They're trying to serve Krishna. But it can be executed in different ways according to one's different nature. Right? One is highlighting one angle, the other one is highlighting another angle. So, and all of them are correct, right? And there's no contradiction. So so we can talk about different examples, which makes it always very interesting for our children. Is when Nand Maharaj, one point area which I thought was very interesting is how when Nand Maharaj goes to see Vyasadeva in Mathura, and they have this wonderful meeting together as brothers, and Vyasadeva urges Nand Maharaj to go back quickly to Vraja. Why? Because he says that and cautions him that you have to be very careful because there's going to be a lot of demons who are going to be attacking Brajvasis. And as Nand Maharaj goes back, and as soon as he arrives there, he hears about Putana, who just died, who Krishna killed, and then and that was really shocking for him. And he started thinking, oh, Vyasadeva must be a great devotee. He can predict. So this was his simplicity. He was so innocent and so simple-minded that he immediately he thought Vyasadeva was such a mystic yogi and so wonderful. And how was Vyasadeva? Why did he say that? Is because he was political astute. He knew he could understand that Kansa, he's upset and he's found out that the 8th son of Devaki is going to kill him, so he's going to try and send all these demons to kill Krishna, right? So in this way, different devotees show different characters and characteristics, but the point that is the absorption in Krishna is there, right? Is there, and they want to serve Krishna. Now, in our last slide, Arjuna resolves the matter with the help of Krishna. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, Draupadi and Bhima are having opposite opinions. So Krishna, in order to reconcile that, this is such a sweet description section where Krishna manifests 4 hands instead of 2 hands. He's known as Chaturbhuja. Why? Because he's trying to stop Bhima with 2 hands, who's adamant on Ashwatthama being killed, and then he's trying to console Draupadi, who doesn't want, who's stopping Arjuna from killing Ashwatthama. So Bhima is saying, kill him, and Draupadi is saying no. Right? So with 2 parties, he manifests 4 hands. Of course, Krishna can have many hands. He can manifest 6 hands if he likes, if 6 people are arguing, right? So in this way, Krishna, he's standing there and waiting, and then he tells Arjuna, he gives him instructions that to reconcile everything and to please everyone. Now that's not easy, right? Because initially he said kill. Then he's implying don't kill. Because why? Because after all, Ashwatthama, he surrendered. He's helpless. He doesn't have a weapon. You've tied him up. And according to the codes of war, you are not supposed to kill somebody who has no weapon, right? So you have to, in other words, you cannot really kill him. And then, of course, Draupadi, he talks about how you have to satisfy Draupadi. You promised her that you would bring the head of this culprit, but now Draupadi doesn't want you to kill him. So all these conflicting opinions are there. So now you have to satisfy everyone. And of course, we know that Arjuna satisfies everyone by cutting the hair of Ashwatthama and cutting his jewel off his head, which is equivalent to killing and not killing. So in this way, we can this chapter ends here. I have 2 extra slides that I would like to point out just as subjects of discussion. The one is how Krishna chooses to enter Srimad Bhagavatam. And I thought this is a nice point where in this chapter, Krishna enters the Bhagavatam for the first time. And this is in verse 17, Prabhupada explains in the purport that this is the first time we see Krishna in action. But how does Krishna choose to come? This is very amazing because Krishna is so great. He's the Supreme Lord. He's the controller. He's so powerful. But he chooses to come as a chariot driver of his friend, as a servant of his devotees, because he's Bhakta Vatsal. He likes to serve his devotees. And this is how he chooses to make his appearance. He becomes a messenger. He becomes a chariot driver of the Pandavas. Right? So why? Because he wants to give all credit to his devotees. So that's a point we can discuss with our children. And then, of course, the point about the next slide about Brahmastra and nuclear, the difference between Brahmastra and nuclear weapons of today. And there's several purports, 3 of them, which discusses these differences. Prabhupada takes great pains to show how the Brahmastra of Vedic times was a lot better and less, very more targeted than today's atomic weapons. Brahmastra is operated more through sound, which is more subtle science, even though it's material, but it's very close to the spiritual. And this way it hits only the target. It doesn't create mass destruction like today's nuclear weapons do. Right? It can be counteracted, like we saw Arjuna do it. He counteracted that. But today's atomic weapons cannot be counteracted. They just do destruction. Right? And of course, Prabhupada makes the point how the atomic weapons cannot destroy the whole cosmic situation. But Brahmastra can do that. So, and in the activities, Shri Radhika Mata, you will talk about the ultimate, an activity for our children, the ultimate Brahmastra is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And she's going to have many activities which are going to connect with with some of the points I made here in terms of there's going to be an activity regarding decisions, how there was opposing sides and how one makes decisions, how the decision must keep in mind the instructions of the instructor, who's giving the instruction, as well as Shastra. So if we take both of these things, then we make a good decision. Like Arjuna, he made such a good decision where he took the instruction from Krishna, but he also applied Shastra, which is also coming from Krishna. So basically, he made such a good decision. So children can be, through that activity, can be taught how to make a good decision. So I'll turn it over to Shri Radhika for her wonderful part now.
Thank you. Okay, give me a few seconds for my screen, please. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining us again. So after we have read the purports ourselves and discussed the translations with our children, we're ready to move on to the comprehensive guide for young readers. And to begin with, I wanted to show some pictures from one of our participants and longtime friends, Shyamarupini Mataji, who has been inspired by the sessions and using the book. So she lives in Bettendorf, Iowa, and this is her son, Balaram. So every Friday, they're reading Bhagavatam together with another family that has 2 daughters. And here's a picture from the guidebook depicting how Krishna or Vishnu is the root of the tree. And then, if you serve the root, all the branches are. So this is an activity from the first chapter of the book. Here's her daughter in the center, Subhadra, and the two other daughters of the family they read with, Ahana and Agruma. And they've also made these words, and also depicting how Shukadev Goswami is a parrot, and the more he pecks at the fruit, the Srimad Bhagavatam gets sweeter and sweeter. So I just wanted to share that and encourage our viewers to please share your pictures and videos with us. It's very encouraging. And we'll move on to chapter 7, the son of Drona punished. So I like to begin all our readings with the children going through the story summary, which is written in a very nice kid-friendly format and a conversation. Vyasadeva was feeling much more hopeful now. So he sat down in his ashram surrounded by beautiful berry trees and began to meditate. While meditating, he thought of Lord Krishna. Then something amazing happened. He saw that Lord Krishna was in control of the whole material world. So it goes on like that, and nice coloring opportunities as well for our children. Wanted to show you Vrinda Kishori Devdasi from the UK, who compiled this particular story summary on her SoundCloud page. Has summary of this chapter.
They're all spirit souls, you and I. We're so full of bliss. We're so happy. We live forever. And we're so full of knowledge. We know everything. But oh no, we're under the dark.
Timmy world.
Yes, the dark material world. And under the dark material world, the spirit soul is covered, and we feel scared. Let's tremble. Ooh, can you tremble?
So you can on SoundCloud, and I wanted to show you. We like to in our Sunday school act out parts of the story summary or the whole story summary. So inspired by one of the rhymes that Vrinda Kishori has in her SoundCloud recording, we did this in Sunday.
Wheels go clickety-clack, your tail goes swish, and your wheels go round. Giddy upward, running away, and then Ashwatthama ran, and Arjuna ran after him. We're running away, run away. Then Arjuna, run away.
Okay. So the book always has key messages listed by grouping verses together, and I generally use this more for my own study than for using it. And given in the book, character descriptions. So as you can see, the Sunday school children are working exactly on this page. This was last year, just about a year ago. And it's a nice way to discuss the characters from this particular chapter. So, I would have the children answer, so what do you know about Lord Krishna? What do you know about Yudhishthira? And they contribute. And then if there's anything to add, to fill in from the book, there are some points given. Their children, while the discussion is going on, were coloring. And the older children were more. Very nice to have multiple choice questions as well as some narrative questions from the chapter to understand the story. And it's always fun to select to understand the flow of the chapter. Higher thinking questions, I use these more during the discussion when we are reading directly from the translations of Prabhupada's books. So, really encourages the children to think carefully. Here's an example. Why do we have to be careful not to cause offenses to others? Is it well known that we should not offend? It is well known that we should not offend devotees, but is it acceptable to offend non-devotees? Very thoughtful question here. That is it okay to just treat people who are not practicing Krishna consciousness, or should we be more careful, no matter what form the living entity takes? This is a really fun activity, of course. Anytime you involve water balloons, the kids have a great time. So the chapter recommends making water bomb brahmastras and having a fight, throwing those water bombs as high in the sky as possible and trying to hit the other water bomb, just like Arjuna's brahmastra met Ashwatthama's brahmastra in the sky. And some of these activities, I take them kind of out of context and do them at a different time when it's suitable. So when we had our picnic, Sunday school picnic, this was in St. Louis in 2018 summer, then, I had this bucket full of water bombs, and the children had to shoot their water bombs up in the air, Arjuna and Ashwatthama, and cancel each other's brahmastras. But I don't have any pictures from that because I didn't want to get my camera out while all the mess and the water was going on. So unfortunately, I don't have any pictures to show. I also did this recently in our homeschooling co-op, Vaishnava Academy, and we just did it indoors. It's winter in Chicago right now. So we made brahmastras inside, and the children were welcome to design what they liked. So some look like this and some look like that, and that's perfectly okay. Decorate them with glitter and ribbons, and some made them pretty thin. I'm, understanding the concept by designing these brahmastras. In Sunday school, we did our brahmastras a bit differently. So again, we didn't do the water bombs, but we just in the classroom, and everybody had the freedom to in the way they liked, and then we our fight inside the classroom. So here's a nice poem, and we acted it out.
Brahmastra! Ashwatthama had a weapon so frightening. When he set it off, it looked as bright as lightning. Activated by Vedic sound, it put fear in the hearts of all those around. Brahmastra, there's nothing faster. Arjuna prayed to Krishna for protection, so in his quest he would achieve perfection. Activated by Vedic sound, it put fear in the hearts of all those around. Brahmastra, there's nothing faster. He counteracted the great force and bound Ashwatthama just like a horse. Cutting the hair and jewel from his head was as good for him as being dead. Brahmastra, Arjuna's faster. Brahmastra, Ashwatthama.
You can see that the children really have fun with games, story through that. And this is a nice activity on preparing a Sunday feast class on karma. What goes around comes around, and give some pointers on how to prepare author's pie, persuade, inform, and entertain your audience. This is the activity that Mataji was mentioning, mantras and music. The Brahmastra was such a powerful weapon. It had the power to destroy everything. Can you believe that it was invoked simply by the sound vibration of mantras? Do you know any other powerful mantras? Yes, that's right, the Maha mantras. So we had this discussion in class. It has the power to awaken our love of God and take us to the spiritual world. So we discussed this in class, and then it was kind of our preparation to go on Harinam. And I really like how, in the guidebook, there are ideas given to the mother or the father rather than us having to come up with everything. This is a really fun one, memory card games. So in the book, there is a resource that gives these little cards, and you can copy them. I copied them on cardstock paper. And then you give them to the children to cut and color. And they really have a good time. While they were coloring, actually, we discussed, a discussion about Arjuna and a discussion about Bhima and their great qualities. And then we were ready for our memory card. And the children had a good not too many cards, it's only doing it rather than, the usual memory match games that we get in the market. So here's an activity that Mataji mentioned, decisions. Think about what you base your decisions on. Are your decisions based on what's best for you, best for everyone, based on morals, what's right or wrong, or are they based on what Guru and Krishna want you to do? And of course, all of those other things could be under the umbrella of what Guru and Krishna want you to do. Think of the decisions you've made and reflect on how you made those decisions. So we had this discussion where the children picked a particular decision from their life, and we discussed all these questions related to that particular decision. Keywords to go into a dictionary and understand the meanings of these spellings, to teach grammar as well as spellings from the Bhagavatam. Nice word search that the children really enjoy. And always at the end of every chapter. So these books are available via Amazon or UK and through Golden Age Media in India. So short and sweet, really fun chapter to discuss with the children. And now we are ready to move to our section where you can ask your questions. So we're so glad, Archana Mataji. And thank you for joining us. Please ask away.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much again. So Mataji, my question would be, so before getting into chapters like this, which talks about the characters of Mahabharata, is it a good idea to go over the storyline of Mahabharata with the kids? And if so, how do you have any recommendation to do that?
Well, they also have very little children's books on the key key sections of the Mahabharata. So you could go through that rather than the bigger book, the detailed story of Mahabharata. You can go through that. Just the smaller children's books on Mahabharata. Radhika, do you have any other opinion on that?
No, that's great. And we also used we read Krishna Dharma Prabhu's Mahabharata with my boys. It's thick, but it is really well written. I mean, the grammar is fantastic. The command over the English language and just the way the scripture is presented is awesome. So, that was our bedtime read. And I think maybe it took 5-6 months. And they wouldn't want to stop. Like they would, Mom, keep going. We don't want to, turn off the light. It was just so enticing and capturing. So perhaps you don't need to do Mahabharata before, but Mahabharata is really nice because a lot of our Srimad Bhagavatam stories are from the Mahabharata. You talk of Queen Kunti's chapter, which is coming up, and she talks of all these different ways that Krishna protected. Well, all of those stories are from the Mahabharata. So I think it's a really good idea to do nighttime, bedtime reading. And there are multiple editions, but I particularly like Krishna Dharma Prabhu.
Thank you.
I agree with that. That's a very good book, Krishna Dharma book. And if children are older, they can read on their own also. But doing bedtime is a great idea.
So if you have questions, please raise your hand using that Zoom tool, and I can call on you. Anybody else have a question right now? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Supriya Sarangi Mataji, please ask away.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. So thank you so much, Mataji. This is the first time I heard the class. Mataji, I'm teaching kids, a group of kids, story time and riddle and what is it called? Tongue twisters. Are there any tongue twisters and riddles based on Krishna conscious stories? Or Krishna...
I will give it to you, Radhika. Do you know any? Like I said, I don't know any that
Question.
you can find those. I'm not aware of any like that.
Yeah, so I was asking if you are specifically looking for tongue twisters. No, I don't know tongue twisters either. But Laura rhymes, Vrinda Kishori and Sri Yashoda. So if you look for those two on SoundCloud, or if you look for Yamini Cassidy, those three have lots of rhymes on SoundCloud. And perhaps even challenge the children to create their own tongue twisters.
Okay. Yeah, Mataji, can you once again please repeat? I will note it down the names on the SoundCloud where I have to search.
Sure. On SoundCloud, Vrinda Kishori Devidasi.
Okay.
And there's Sri Yashoda Devidasi. She's from Australia. Vrinda Kishori is from UK. And Yamini Cassidy, she's from the United States. And I believe she's a Prabhupada disciple. She and her husband, Michael Cassidy, they have put a lot of rhymes. And they put a lot of, and then there's, of course, Mrigakshi Devidasi. Mrigakshi Devidasi is albums that are available on Krishna.com.
Mrigakshi Devidasi. Okay. So these are mostly on SoundCloud, and Mrigakshi Devidasi and available on Krishna.com. Right, Mataji?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji. I'll look into this. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
And Mataji, you are next. Please ask away.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Guru. Mataji, I'm supposed to do a children's class in coming 2 weeks' time, and I have no experience of doing this ever before. And this will be a group of 5 to 7 children of the ages 5 to 8 years. So I'm feeling very, I'm just how to begin about how to do it. What can I start with?
I think Sri Radhika, I think you should answer this question.
What are the ages?
Age will be, they will be like 5 to 8 years of age.
Okay. So, I've been teaching Sunday school for 20 years now, and I've used a lot of curriculum. I've developed my own. I mean, in the end, what I've come to like is the comprehensive guide for young readers. So if you're asking me, what would be my suggestion as a teacher, as a parent, get the Srimad Bhagavatam for young readers, ask your children to buy the book as well. So each person has a copy at home. And they're able to use it as a workbook, and then just start chapter 1 onwards. If you go to our Vaishnav Academy YouTube channel, you'll find systematically our recordings chapter 1 onwards. And Arudha Mataji's PowerPoints are also on a drive that I've shared with everyone. And you can just, show the presentation for chapter 1 and then move to the comprehensive guide for young readers and do the activities from that. Kind of just systematically follow along. The recordings that we've made. That would be my recommendation.
And do you think it'll be a good idea to do it online? Because I haven't met those children before, and I want to begin now. So
yes,
on an online
I'm currently teaching online from this book, and it works out just great on Zoom. So, it's really the same system. You have a group of children and you read turn-by-turn translations, and everybody's videos are on, so they're actually engaged. And then once it takes about a day or two to complete all the translations from Prabhupada's book. And then we move to Arudha Mataji's book, and we start with the story summary. Then we do breakout rooms, and we do the multiple choice questions. We do the activities. I have particularly not done the craft activities in the online class. I kind of assign it to the child, and then they do it at home, because working with glue and craft sticks and all of that to do it, right there on Zoom seems a little cumbersome to me. But we do 1 chapter a week, and we have 5 sessions every week. And then we move on to the next chapter, and I think it works really great online. I know multiple other people that are doing it online. This same book currently during the pandemic, and it's working out for them too.
And Mataji, how big should this session be? What is your suggestion?
An hour.
How long? Yeah, sorry.
1
how
hour.
long? 1 hour for children as young as 5 years also?
Oh yeah, I think you can keep their attention. Now for 5-year-olds, I always have a parent sit with the child. So up to like 7 years of age or 6, it's always one parent has to sit with the child. They have to be committed to assisting, because otherwise the child so much can't keep up with what page number in the book or which translation are we on. So I always request a parent to sit. And then, yes, they're able to sit for an hour. And we even do, things in between, like, well, it's not a straight hour of sitting down on the chair in front of the computer. We'll do gestures. So for instance, if you were doing chapter 7, okay, now everybody's going to take a turn and they're going to act out one of the Pandavas, and everybody else is going to guess who you're acting. So one child gets up and they act, they bow and arrow. So the other children guess, oh, that's Arjuna. And the other child gets up and, a club. Oh, that's Bhima. So we break it up in between, something that they get up and do for that young age.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Mataji.
Vaishnav Academy's email is va.iskan@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out, any of you. And either Arudha Mataji or myself, I can forward any questions to Arudha Mataji.
Please, can you say that again?
va.iskan@gmail.com.
Right.
Reach us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Dear friend Achintya Priya Mataji from Orissa, thank you for being our loyal supporter. You're next.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I'd like to ask, Radha Mataji was mentioning that in Srimad Bhagavatam it is said that whenever there's a lot of burden on earth, Krishna sends this kind of pandemics, epidemics. So I would like to ask that Maya asked that also devotees, they leave their body during these pandemics, like it was in the case of this coronavirus. So how could we explain that?
Yeah. Well, it's again, the devotees passing away is unlike the passing away of conditioned souls. It's very different. So their passing away is a direct result of Krishna's desire, especially in the case we saw of Bhakti Charu, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. I mean, it was Krishna's desire and his own desire to leave this planet. And so we have to explain it to our children in that way, that a devotee's death is not the same as the death of a conditioned soul. When Krishna talks, and the point that I mentioned, how Krishna brings, calamities in the way of these pandemics and wars and things like that, is meant for devotees' understanding. I mean, we don't try to, preach to the outside world in this way, because they won't be able to accept it in the proper perspective. So that also, the way we present to our children is that how these things are very bad, and that we should avoid, eating animals and things like that, because we have no right to kill, anybody. So like that, from the compassionate point of view, you can stress that point with our children also. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Achintya Priya Mataji. All right, Archana Mataji has another question.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Sorry, I just have a follow-up question from what I think Achintya Priya Mataji asked just now. So when devotees pass away, then we can explain it the way. But what when non-devotees who are like close family members or someone does, how will that be a point of discussion with the kids?
Yeah, so the point is that for our children, we don't cast them as demons or anything like that. How can we? Because Krishna knows, why that person had to pass away in this way. So we don't point them, demonize them, or do anything like that, because that's not the point in here. It's unfortunate, and we feel bad, and we sympathize. That's the part we emphasize, that how there's grief in somebody's passing away, and we share that grief, but we understand the bigger picture behind it. Well, in other words, when Krishna wants certain things to happen. Mainly, I was talking about the collective tragedies of life. How Krishna, in this war of Mahabharata, he brought millions of people together because they were becoming a burden, too much sinful activities. So this is his way of taking away that burden in one go, in one stroke. So I'm talking more about the bigger aspect, not individually. If anybody dies, okay, well, we don't see him as, bad just because he left his body. No, the bigger picture: pandemics, wars, hurricanes, where thousands and millions of people die, right? So we're talking about, why do these things happen? They happen because it's collective karma, where there's too much sinful things, and that's explained several times in the Bhagavatam. Where even in the beginning, when Mother Earth, Bhumi, comes to Brahma, and that leads to Krishna's advent. It's cited as one of the reasons why Krishna came.
Thank you, Mata.
Thank you, Archana Mataji. We have a question from Roli Mataji from YouTube. And she asks, if anything is scary for young children, do you make it simplistic?
Yeah, we just have to adapt according to what the capacity of understanding is. It's not like for example, when we have to explain something horrific, like the story of what's his name, who was killed in Mahabharata very mercilessly.
Ashwatthama.
No,
oh,
not
sorry. His son.
Yeah, Arjuna's son. What's his name? I forget his name. It's just slipping my
Me too.
mind.
Uttara's husband.
Yeah, Uttara's
His father.
Yeah, Uttara's son. Yeah,
Abhimanyu. Thank you, Ankur Prabhu.
Yeah, couldn't remember. So that's pretty merciless killing. And then how he was killed. And then we have stories of Pashurama, and his killing of 21 generations of Kshatriyas. And there's rivers of blood and hands and legs cut off and floating in the river of blood and things like that. So these things can get very scary for our children. If they are very, very young, we can avoid that. But older children, they actually enjoy it because they like war. They like fighting. There's a side in us which likes all these heroic things. And so this becomes a very nice way to satisfy those side in all of us. But it's set in such a wonderful way. It's set not in a material way, but in a transcendental way, where Krishna is the picture. So that's the difference of why we should not avoid these. We should not avoid these things for our children, unless they are very, very young, and they may not want to hear this.
Okay, Ankur Prabhu, wonderful father of two, please ask away.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for such a wonderful session. So it's a wonderful series that's going on every Saturday. So we wait for Saturdays to come. So I remember आज Saturday. So I'm a teacher. So after the class, I'm ready ki fatafat bhago and I have to take the class. So it starts at 7 and I'm like occupied till 7. Anyhow, coming to the one very important specific question, Mataji. You guided us that we should deal with the adult topics very carefully and we must deal with that. So I take your point. Initially, I was a bit hesitant, though abhi, we are just on 7th and 8th chapter only, first canto. After your guidance, it's been that I've been discussing with the children. But again, maybe at some specific points we will have to discuss. Maybe when we get more examples, like recently, yesterday only we were discussing that Krishna had these many wives and children were 16,108 wives Krishna had. So that was the kind of reaction. So we didn't go much into the details, but yes, there were 8 Patranis and so little of that. Then they had that what Draupadi had. Yes, there was a question of the whole discussion started with the word chaste. So the chaste Queen Kunti. So they asked what is the meaning of chaste. So I told them that little meaning like pativrata and जो अपने पत्नी का कहना मानते हैं, some with some basic discussions going in that line. How the point comes तो यहाँ से उन लोगों को ये सब बातें समझ में कि okay husband and wife की बात मानना, but when it comes to such points maybe I think that मैं एक वो impactful चीज उनको नहीं बता पाया. I could deliver what it must have come. So I was thinking, कि अभी Aruda Mataji, what would she tell? So asking a very specific question.
Yes, Prabhu. Good questions. We have to give our children according to what they can handle, according to their level of understanding. But still, we still expose them to those sections of the Bhagavatam. It's not like we avoid them, but we give them as much as they can, assimilate. Not that we go into a lot of details, because they are curious, and so we satisfy that curiosity to some extent. But then we know that these topics will come again, so we don't have to give them all at once. Okay, all the questions doesn't have to be answered right now, or they won't even ask so many questions. They're just simply going to ask according to their level of understanding. Now, in terms of questions like chastity, it's a very nice point, because chastity can be on the material level as well as on the transcendental level. Material level is when a woman is chaste to her husband and a husband is chaste to his wife. Both of them are chaste to each other. In other words, they are, helping each other in their responsibilities as husband and wife. They each have responsibilities, and they are doing those responsibilities. On a transcendental level, our ultimate chastity is to Krishna, because he is we are part and parcel of him, and this is where the purpose of life is, to be chaste to him. So ultimately, a wife can be only chaste if she's also chaste to Krishna. Then her chastity to her husband is naturally, a byproduct, because a wonderful devotee of Krishna will be chaste to her husband. And the same thing with the man, if he is very chaste to Krishna, then he will be also a good father and a good husband. So that's the point about chastity. I was thinking that in the terms of in questions of attraction to the opposite sex, in questions such as husband and wife and those type of relationships, it's not very hard, because children are living in that situation. They see a mother and then they see a father, and they have a different relationship. Between mother and father has a different flavor of relationship versus what children have with their parents. So they can see that, and they can understand that this is a devotee way to live, is to put Krishna in the center of our life and to serve together as husband and wife. And we have a mature relationship as well, so they can see that. So when we talk about, relationships in the Shastra, which are not, licit, which are not very good, are based on sense gratification, they can understand that, because they know, well, the decent way is what we have here at home, but the wrong way is when somebody, goes with another person, a woman, other than one's own wife, or another man other than one's own husband, like that. So they can understand, and you can explain that how if people live with each other, man and woman live together, and they're not married, well, that's called illicit relationship, and that's what's bad. They can understand that because they're living in a family. They're not living as brahmacharis. They're living in a family. So these questions are not very difficult. And when we have stories such as where even though they may be husband and wife, but their life is based on sense gratification and sense enjoyment, even that's not very difficult to explain to them, because life is centered on Krishna. In other words, whatever we do, whatever we eat, we offer to the Lord. And if it's not done in the home, that means it's a Grihamedi life, and that's what I talked about, the ashram versus. As long as we center it on Krishna, as long as we do everything we do for Krishna, then it becomes an ideal life. So stories such as Puranjan story and Diti stories and things like that become easier to understand if we explain them this one basic point, that a man and woman can live together only after they get married. This is the religious way of doing things, and anything other than that is considered wrong. And that life of man and woman living together should be centered on Krishna, on pleasing Krishna. Okay. So once we understand and bring this point, so every story you bring home to that point, and the areas where it becomes very embarrassing, very difficult, then you go faster on those areas. You don't have to explain to them. And generally children are curious only to some extent. Like they are not going to ask too much details because their mind just doesn't allow that at this point, So like that, you should be able to, deal with those things. In terms of Krishna having so many wives, of course, this is, Krishna, he also lifted Govardhan Hill, and Krishna is the natural husband of every one of us, we all Prakriti and Krishna is Purusha. So Krishna's relationship between his queens and himself is based on transcendental pure love, and he's capable. He also expanded himself into so many Krishnas to fulfill desire, and how there's so many things that come up, and that we should be eager to explain that to them. We should not shy away from that and give them the confidence that Krishna stands apart. We cannot imitate him. Okay.
Thank you. This will be our last question, looking at the time. Bhavin Mehta Prabhu is asking, in relation to the higher thinking question given in the book about, is it acceptable to offend non-devotees? The question is, when our kid asks how to deal with non-devotees causing trouble like bullying or racism, then how to deal with them without offending them?
Radhika, I'll let you answer that.
So there's a difference we can explain to a child between offense and standing up for yourself. And it's a really important lesson of life that we have to have very strong boundaries around ourselves and those that are dependent upon us, because that is a duty that Krishna has given us to protect our own bodies and to protect the bodies or emotional, intellectual, psychological well-being of those who are dependent on us. So we spare no stone unturned in, I'm very firm about, don't you dare bully my child. And I teach my children how to protect themselves. A couple of things. One is there are a lot of child protection trainings the ISKCON world provides. And I've taken them for myself and my child. And part of it is also bullying. It's not just, this kind of abuse or that kind of abuse. Part of these kind of trainings also deal with bullying. So you can tap into like the ISKCON Child Protection Office, ISKCON Child Protection Office of North America, or resources like that. And then the other recommendation is, I don't know if you're familiar with Bir Krishna Maharaj's philosophy model that he's developed. It's called empathic communication. He's written a book on it. And it's all about, being in touch with your feelings and needs. And so teaching the child, are you feeling upset? Are you feeling angry right now? Because you have a need for respect, when the person is being bullied or is facing a racist comment. And then how to deal with those feelings and needs. So perhaps you can delve into Bir Krishna Maharaj's book and his seminars on empathic communication that really teach people to not only be empathic, but also to stand up for themselves, because that's a very important part of self-empathy, being kind to yourself, is learning to have very firm boundaries. Don't mess with me. It's one thing to be a humble Vaishnav, and it's another thing to stand up for what's wrong. Mataji, any corrections?
No, very nicely put, Radhika. I do agree with that one has to stand up for what's wrong. And the children should learn that art of speaking up when he or she sees something going wrong. I agree. And I think the resources that you have given are very good. And you're part of that. You're involved in that, right? Yeah.
So Prabhu's asking, what's the name of the book? It's called, I have it right here. It's something that I'm closely involved with. It's called Realizing Our Empathic Nature Connected to Krishna. And it's by Bir Krishna Maharaj. It's available on Amazon, and it's just amazing. All right, Mataji, anything in closing?
No, I am happy and satisfied with all of your questions. Thank you, all of you sincere listeners. Till we meet again.